growth requires more than capital.
Why do we call it the cheat code? Nobody said growth had to be fair.
Revenue solves everything.
Welcome to the cheat code. What was our fastest path to revenue?
We tend to like to do things the hard way.
What's the cheat code? It's giving yourself an unfair advantage over the others.
What is it that really works, and how are we going to grow these organizations?
That's our cheat code.
Hey guys, you are back on another episode of the Cheat Code. I'm once again joined by Mr. Josh Wagner. Josh,
I'm doing
how
well,
are you?
Thank you.
Sweet. Well, we've got a great guest this morning, and really this kind of came about because I'm a big Craig Rosenberg fan. One of my good friends, always tune into his podcast, and I forget how many episodes ago it was, but a handful of episodes ago, they had a dude named Reddin on the show who I was actually not familiar with, but after listening to the podcast, I knew we had to get him on the show. Just great topic, great pragmatic thinker. Mac is currently the founder of Commsor and a American expat currently in Denmark, source of endless dinosaur facts. If you check out his LinkedIn, you'll get a bit of a taste of that. And just all around, I think the type of thinker that we love to have on the show. So Mac, welcome to the Cheat Code. What is behind the love of dinosaurs, by the way?
Is an accident. Which you'll probably notice is like a recurring theme in our strategy as a company is embracing accidents.
You had an accident with the
dinosaur?
dinosaur?
I mean, so actually someone misspelled our name a while back as Commsor. And someone on our team was like, haha, like a dinosaur. And then it just became an inside joke, and we started hiding dinosaur puns in our marketing emails, and then we went to rebrand, and it was just like, well, the dinosaur is our internal brand, so why can't the dinosaur also be our external brand? So it's just, right. it just happened organically, really. No more intentionality than that.
I mean, who doesn't love a dinosaur pun?
My kids certainly do.
I genuinely stand by our logo, and the dinosaurs are a competitive advantage for us.
That's incredible.
Agreed. So, as the show name connotates, we're all about finding ways to do things that are pragmatic, they're different, and ultimately yield an outsized result. So, and of course, season 2's topic is all about partnerships. So, Mac, let's just dive right in. What is your cheat code as it relates to partner ecosystems, or the host of names that we're labeling them as these days?
I would go, it's partnering with people. I think most people, when they think of partnerships, they think of, companies to companies, they think of like HubSpot and Microsoft and ecosystems and alliances and these big, hefty, and there's obviously a ton of value in those. Like there are huge companies that have been built to hundreds of millions of dollars revenue and more off the back of that. For us, a lot of our partnerships have been much more focused on partnering with people rather than brands and companies.
Yeah, I mean, again, like so many of the topics that we outline on the show are like just painfully obvious. Like relationships are at the heart of everything. But like so like let's go a little bit deeper on that. Like what does that actually look like, in function, and how do you, there's this terrible notion of scale that we always bring into every conversation. And I feel like that's always the rebuttal that I get when I talk about, relationships being what drives value and revenue and everything within business. So curious as to what that looks like in a functional
Well, I will
manner.
say, sidebar, I had I did 7 inbound demos today, all based off of partnering with people, our social strategy, and relationships. So like the scale question to me is like, you're just doing it wrong if you're not scaling, right? It's like, do things that don't scale and then figure out how to scale them is the answer.
Yep.
But I guess the deeper bit is, I think there's a broader trend just in B2B in general over the last few years that is shifting from a brand first mentality to a people first mentality, right? Like it's more about the people behind the brand. Social selling and personal brands are becoming more and more prevalent in the buying and the selling process for B2B companies. I don't remember the exact number, so don't quote me on it, but there was a study recently that was like, it was 80, 76%, something like that, of B2B buyers check out a company at an AE social media presence in the buying process. Like the people behind the brand are becoming more and more important. It's almost like it used to be like, here's the brand, inside you have the people. Now you have the people and they're kind of sitting around a brand. So that
it's funny you mentioned that, because like every business that I've ever owned and operated, like the people page has always been like one of the most trafficked, areas on the site.
Same with me. And it's because people care. Like at the end of the day, it's people making a buying decision. Yes, you're selling to a company, but it's a person or a series of people making that decision. It's their jobs, it's their day-to-day that's being impacted by that buying decision. So I think there's just this broader trend of appealing to the emotional and the logical side of people rather than purely the brand needs. I mean, like there's so many examples. Like you go look at LinkedIn, right? It's like the engagement on a brand account will be like a quarter or a tenth at best of what the CEO or the VP of sales is getting on their account. Because it's just kind of human nature at the end of the day. Like once again, like you said, it's kind of obvious when you put it out there, but that's not the way most brands have sold for the last 20 years. But if you go further back, that's actually how they sold. So it's almost like it's going back to the way it was in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you kicked off the show, you started talking about some of these heavyweight partnerships like a Microsoft, right? Where, these things are big and massive and it's very much about Microsoft. But for startups, especially, the personal side, the people side of it is a competitive advantage, right? It gives you that opportunity to be nimble, to be creative, to be pragmatic. So what would you tell startups? Like, how do you really embrace the people side of it? Like, what are some of the tactical things that they should be thinking about to give them a competitive advantage in this partner, go to network, as you call it?
So I think the basic model that we think about is like, you have to build a network and then you have to activate that network. That's like the simplest way of it. So building that network can look like a lot of things. That can be social selling and building your personal brand on LinkedIn or Twitter. That's one way to build an audience and a network. It can be partnering with big names in your space, right? Like the B2B influencer is on the rise right now. We've got an increasing number of people who've built brands, not as, TikTok dancers or Instagram models, but as experts in the B2B space where they actually make a full-time living now partnering with brands as people. So you can leverage other people's networks and things like that. There's advisors, there's investors, there's leveraging your champions and your customers, depending on how early you are, but treating your best customers as potential partners rather than just customers or users. There's so much value. I saw, once again, I don't remember the exact stat and I feel like I should, but there's a study diving into like what the actual commercial loss of a $50,000 churn is. And it's not $50,000. It's actually $250,000 to $350,000 because of the references, the word of mouth, and the other things that come with each individual customer and what they have as impact on the broader market.
It's the same thing on the employee side. So like we brought an LMS to market. Like one of our big value props was, what is, employee churn costing you and so on. And, even more so when you think about, those relationships that are held, that brand, everything that we're kind of talking about. Like it's not just how do I train someone, up and get them active and activated within the position. It's, we're building real IP, with every individual that joins our organization. So I guess why, we've mentioned several times, like this is totally a no-brainer. Like, why do you think the inverse is true? Like it's funny because I'm just having a conversation with a founder right now, because all of their presence, and it's primarily LinkedIn, their B2B organization, is through that like corporate brand account. And that's how they've always done things. It's very dry. It's, check out this feature, here's our press release, so on and so forth. And really trying to have that conversation around, hey, who within your organization can we start to build as that, advocate, thought leader, whatever terrible term we want to put on it, but it's someone who's human and who's, really starting to be the market facing aspect of that brand. And, they just kind of scatter for the, it's like an 8th grade dance. Like everyone's up against the wall. No one wants to kind of dive into that. Like, why is it so like counterintuitive to folks?
I mean, partially it's just, it's new for a lot of people. I mean, like personally for me, like I didn't start building my personal brand, for example, on LinkedIn until 9 months ago. Cause it was like, it's hard. It's weird. It's like you're weirdly putting yourself out there. Like I think for a lot of founders, you can kind of hide behind your brand sometimes. And sometimes that's a good thing. But if you look at like, look at all the most successful companies in the world, you think of a person behind them, right? You think of Apple, you think of Steve Jobs, you think of Virgin, you think of, right. And of course I can't think of his name now because I'm blanking. So maybe a bad example, but that one,
Richard Branson.
That's the guy. It's been a long day.
That's the guy.
I'm in the future from you. So
That's right. We should mention it's like 6 p.m. your time right now.
This is my 16th of 17 calls today. So
Crazy.
it's been a wild
And he was
day, very
early.
productive day. So I think there's an element of just like it's a hard muscle to build if you're not used to it. Some founders it's just like it happens naturally. For some people, some employees, it happens naturally. It's also just it's sometimes less obvious because it's not necessarily as measurable. There's not as much of like a system behind it. It's like, oh, if I partner with Microsoft, I can be like, well, Microsoft referred Justin to me, Justin closed, therefore my partnership with Justin was worth this amount of money. And there are cases of that with people, but people become like, there's like the word of mouth thing, the immeasurable thing, like it just kind of happens. And if you do a good job, like Notion is a great example of a word of mouth machine. Like, can they measure everything there? Absolutely not. Does it happen? And does it drive a shit ton of their business? Just individuals starting their own communities, creating templates, things like that? Absolutely. Like I look at Notion as a great example, actually, of partnering with people. They partner with creators who are creating templates and fans who are hosting meetups. And like, I can't name a partnership that Notion has with a company, but I know a ton of individuals in the Notion ecosystem that probably drive hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of business to Notion.
No, we kind of have that give to get mantra, right? In a partnership, especially when you're talking about person to person. So you had your 2-step formula: build an audience and then activate the audience.
Yeah.
You're having to give something, right, of value to start building. What should people be thinking about in terms of that value exchange?
Yeah. So it could be, if you're building your personal brand, your value is your content and you're bringing people in that way. Influencers, you can partner in different ways. Sometimes you're just outright paying people to be, I think it's like the bad cheat code way of doing it. Like there's time and a place where that works, but I wouldn't build my strategy on that as the backbone. We actually have an example. We did when we did our relaunch of the company in January, we got between 1.4 and 1.6 million LinkedIn impressions without spending a dime by activating our network to basically go out and talk about us.
So let's talk about that, because I think those functional examples are just great, that really kind of solidify what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned relationships are important, and this is the result of focusing on building relationships rather than focusing on selling. So I always love the stat that would like 3 to 5% of your market of your buyers are in market at any given time. But most go-to-market motions are built on the assumption of like, I'm just going to hit everybody, and some people will buy and some people won't. Our approach has been, when you're trying to build a network, like I have this graphic that I've drawn, which is like, in a traditional go-to-market motion without this, it's like, I'm going to try to sell to you and you're either going to close won or close lost. It's like this binary model. And yeah, maybe in 6 months or 9 months, I'll try to get you over to the close won again. But it's like, you just go to this graveyard of closed lost. Versus if you're building a network and you're partnering with people and you're treating people as they could be more multimodal than just buy or don't buy. If they don't buy, they're still in your network. They're still in your community. There's still value that can come out of that. Whether maybe they'll refer another person to buy. Maybe you'll end up hiring them. Maybe they'll buy in 3 months. So it's this idea to the market. You're trying to push in a smart way to those who are buyers right now. And you're trying to pull people into your network who are not buyers right now. And that, I mean, that's a bit of an oversimplification. So we spent 6 months basically as we were building up to this relaunch, because we pivoted as a business, which is a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. We knew we were going to pivot and sell to a different target audience. And we knew we weren't going to be ready to sell our product for 6 months. So instead of trying to sell, we focused on marketing to build relationships and build connections and give into that market. So instead of being like, hey, salespeople, we're trying to sell to you now, come buy our shit, which is what most companies do if you really simplify their GTM strategy. We were like, hey, salespeople, I want to get to know you. I want to get on a coffee chat. I want to meet up with you. I want to take you out to dinner. I want to figure out how we can give into you. How can we connect people? How can we do that? So we basically built a brand around connecting with people and getting to know people and all that. So when it came time to basically ask for those people, say, hey, we're actually doing our big launch next week. We'd love to get you involved. People were like, yeah, I love you guys. Of course I'll get involved. Like, no payment, just I love you guys. I've gotten to know you as people. You're not just this faceless brand. I know Mac. I like Ben on the team. I've gotten to know Ben. So we had like 110, 112 people who all on the same day posted about us in different ways. And they didn't just copy paste it. This is also the people first mentality. Very often people are like, oh, I'm going to pay 20 influencers and say, here's the copy paste message. Paste this out there. I want the brand message first. But then you're losing the value of like, I trust Justin or Josh because I know Justin as a person. If suddenly Justin is just posting Commsor's brand message, you're like, what is this shit? Like, this is not Justin. So he gave people the leeway to kind of put their own personal story behind it, whether it was their story of being an early customer or getting to know our team or their belief in the methodology or an experience where this go-to-network methodology had impacted them in their career. So there was a personal angle to it still. So it's a bit of a long story, but short version was build relationships authentically, create a network, and then be able to activate that network when the time was necessary, but let that network still do it in their way and in their voice.
Yeah, I think what is super important to underscore on stories like that is, you have to provide value and really be doing that in an authentic way throughout that entire process. I just think, like when you mentioned, hey, I want to get to know you, let's meet up for a coffee, this, that, and the other. Like, you can see when organizations do that in a really superficial manner. And, historically, the way of doing so has been like, I want to understand your strategic goals for the year, right? And we all know
you can smell the commission breath.
Yeah,
right?
We all know what's coming
You're
next.
waiting for that pitch.
Yep.
It's right around the corner.
Especially if you view the brand as someone who themselves are fairly superficial. It's like, oh, I use your chat client. How are you going to influence my strategic goals, right? Like, you just haven't built that brand around value forward and the way it means to influence like real things that people care about. And so, like, you really do have to keep it personal and valuable and just authentic throughout that entire process. But to your point, like, what's the value of, I think you said 112 or 113 folks, like, putting organic messaging out to their network? People trust them. Like, if you were to like try to quantify something like that, and try to garner that same amount of value through like traditional paid media and so on, like it's massive. And so, like, it really does pay off.
Just that amount of impressions on LinkedIn, if we'd done ads, would have been $70,000 to $100,000 worth of ads.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So for starters, it's like, great. So we just got $100,000 of brand, advertising for free. Our time went into it, but still. And there's a longevity effect of it, right? Like, people posting, those posts are still up. It creates affinity, like it creates engagement. We get some more people involved. An ad is like, I always use the example of like most go-to-market tools or systems right now, whether it's SDRs, cold calling, whether it's ads, whatever it is. If you stop shoveling money into it, it dies.
Right.
If your SDRs make no calls this month, you get nothing out of it. If you stop paying Google for your ads this month, you get nothing out of it. Versus if you're building relationships and you're focusing on this compounding value, sure, might be a little slower to start. I've used the analogy of like, it's like every time you want a vegetable, you can go to the store and buy a vegetable. That works, but you got to get in your car, you got to drive there. It's going to cost you money. You got to buy it. It's probably going to have been flash frozen, and now it's like fresh in the grocery store. You go home, great, you got your tomato. Versus like this approach, the people partnerships, the go to network is like having your own homegrown garden. Yeah, you got to make space to have the garden. You got to have the right soil. You got to plant them. You got to nurture it. It's not going to give you a tomato today, like going to the store will. But once it does, you're going to have more tomatoes. They're going to taste better, and it's going to have been cheaper.
Yeah, no one wants a tomato that tastes like shit.
Yeah. Just I don't know why I picked tomato as the fruit, but
whatever. I love tomatoes. I love garden tomatoes.
Yeah.
It's like my jam.
You should talk to my brother. He's got his garden is fruiting right now, and it's going to get too hot pretty soon. So
I've got tomatoes growing in right now as well. I'm very excited.
Yeah, good
Dude,
stuff.
You guys all have to send me tomatoes.
Well, I was thinking about that value exchange early, and what you said about influencer and sharing experiences and being authentic and vulnerable and things like that. I had we're advisors for a couple of different companies, and one has a young group of salespeople, and they're like, well, how do I start building a presence? I don't really have that much experience, and what value do I bring? I said, well, dude, you do like 500 cold calls a week. I'm sure there are 500 stories in those 500 cold calls that you could tell about dealing with people, rejection, wins, losses, all those things. And he was like, oh, it's a great idea. And then I've seen him start to get more adventurous, we'll say, with the way he posts and how he tells those stories and shares those things. And I think, like you said, these B2B influencers are sharing their experience, and they probably have, hopefully, decades of experiences to lean on. But even if you don't, not all of them, not all of them. That's one of my rubs, but whatever.
I just hate the term influencer too. But
yeah, I do too. But I think it is an opportunity, right? Like, you all are doing things daily in your lives that are interactions that you could share those experiences and start to build step by step on that type of thing.
On the influencer topic, I saw, I can't remember who it was that wrote about this recently, But there's 3 tiers of influencer you can build at a B2B company. And like, there's the easy, like they're harder, but more effective if you start inner. So the inner part is like, turn your customers into influencers, right? Like if you can leverage them, that's going to be the most impactful because
for sure.
Real customers, real trust, real voice. Next up is your team. Can you turn your team into internal influencers, internal evangelists? Because like, they're going to just do it naturally. They have their experiences. They know the space. Then the outer ring is like third party influencers, partner with third parties. Like, you know, if I'm paying you to post, like, yeah, it's still probably more effective than spending that money on ads, but like the trust level has gone down as I've gone out of those rings, whereas the ease of activation has gone up. So it's a bit of, I think best strategies, you're going to try to balance all 3, but they are different. And the way you activate each of those 3 is different.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you can, when you're talking to an organization, I'm just thinking about your customer influencer, which, you know, is, you know, the mecca of value there. Almost every organization, when we begin talking to them, I find that they view that customer testimonial as like this really fragile thing that they're going to like overuse pretty quickly. And the response is like, oh, we have to go get more customer testimonials, which yes, absolutely. Like you need to expand your customer base, but like, why aren't you like cultivating that relationship so that you've got multiple folks, you know, within that organization that understand your value, that you've got relationships with and so on. So like, you really do have to think about investing in each one of those channels in the same way that marketers should think about investing in technology or media or content and so on. Like that content is, you know, like it's going to outperform whatever white paper or ebook or, you know, like cheesy, you know, thing that organizations like feel the need to just churn out. It really is like what content should be.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and you were saying earlier, like people buy from people, right? So I think that customer relationship side is somewhat similar. I tend to see people within organizations over-index on, oh, well, we're not done yet with that thing, or we had a hiccup last week. We can't ask them that. Like, you should be working on building the relationship so that those things that may not be happening perfectly aren't the end all be all, right? Like a lot of times you're right. Just the relationship alone will propel the product forward. You might get good feedback. You might get this, you might get that. You might get a heads up that, hey, we're looking at somebody else. There's so many things and so much value in the relationship that testimonial, whatever you want to call it, could be 10 times better just on the relationship than even the product itself.
Who really trusts like case studies and testimony?
Nobody.
On websites, right? It's like, okay, that quote was either written by the CS rep and the customer was like, yeah, whatever,
Just signed off on
that
it.
person's not at the company anymore, or they churned from 2 years ago and they just left the quote up there. It's like,
exactly.
At the end of the day, like the only word of mouth and testimonial that really works at scale is the unmeasurable, untrackable, like actual word of mouth, which is like, you're a happy customer. You're just going to talk about us organically.
Yeah, it's funny. We, one of our portfolio companies, we were looking for testimony or, you know, customer references, right? Can we put a customer on a call? And the founder was hesitant to put one of our customers on the phone with them. And I was talking with the prospect and said, hey, you know, we work with so-and-so. And he's like, oh, I know X and Y over there. And he's like, oh, those are our customers. And I said, why don't you just reach out to him and talk to him? And I told the founder.
That's the thing as well. They're going to do that anyways, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
a buyer or a prospect, they're going to go into their communities. They're going to go tap their peers. They're going to look at G2 reviews. Like
exactly.
They're doing it anyways. So any blockers you put up, you're just getting in your own way.
Yeah. And I told the founder that I was like, listen, they're going to talk to this person and they know him. So what's the worst that can happen? And, you know, I got the feedback back from him and like, oh no, it was a great call. You know, they were honest about some limitations, but they were honest about some good things. And like, if you just try to rose color everything, nobody believes it. Right. You want to hear.
Yeah. It's like a company's tagline is the best at this or the number one way. And you're like, okay, like
maybe not.
Instantly do not. Or my favorite is the only tool that does this. And you're like, it's almost
not
never the only tool that does a thing.
Yeah. You kind of want to hear what the hiccups are going to be and see if those are okay for you. Because at the end of the day, you know, it's not going to be perfect. So what am I willing to deal with and who's going to tell me? Right. And how do they?
And it's also a good litmus test.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff is also like fodder for more, you know, like a social post, right? Like, hey, you know, we're struggling with this happened. Like, it's like being a comedian, like all your material is around you just like getting that muscle to reach into it is I think, to the earlier point, like what folks aren't used to doing.
Yeah, it's a good litmus test for like, are you actually building a company and a product that's functioning, right? Like if you have to hide behind like not letting your customers say what they really think, you're probably not building a company that's going to be around for a long time.
Right.
Unless you're maybe like IBM or Oracle or something, but they've been around for so long, it doesn't matter what their customers think anymore.
Yeah, they've already overcome the hurdle.
So Mac, I know that, like you actually, even the sweatshirt you're wearing right now, I think is a great example of this. But like, I'm curious, like, what are some other examples of campaigns that you guys have done that kind of capture this, relationship aspect of partnerships?
Yeah, so the first one we did actually started as a mistake. So we got sort of known as the purple hoodie people. I don't know if you've seen any of them on LinkedIn, but it's been like, and people keep posting about them. It's been 6 months. So we ordered some purple hoodies. We thought we were ordering 25 for our team. We ended up with a couple hundred. So
250.
It was a $15,000 mistake that we turned into a campaign. And we were in the middle of pivoting, so we didn't really have a product to sell yet. We were paying to store these hoodies. And one of our team members one day was like, "Can I just send this hoodie to a few folks that have been helpful recently?" And I was like, "Yeah, please, like, just get rid of these hoodies. I just like, please get rid of them. I don't want to see this bill every month of like $600 for storing hoodies, right?" So we had no expectation of it being a campaign. But one of the people who got one made a post about a week after getting one. Once again, we didn't ask them to, and that's also like, that's the way, like, if you ask them to make a post, it's going to be less effective than if they just do it.
Right.
And there was like 40 comments just being like, "Oh my God, I love the hoodie. How do I get one? How do I get one?" So I just started DMing people who commented. I was like, "Please take my hoodie." Like, seriously, like I do not want this. And then people started posting, and it just started becoming this thing where people were like, "Oh my God, I'm in the purple hoodie club. Oh my God, I got a hoodie. How did you get a hoodie?" It was just like,
that's hilarious.
Like, we never measured it because we couldn't, but like probably millions of impressions across hundreds of LinkedIn posts. And to this day, like, I will just open LinkedIn and see someone posting a clip of themselves on a podcast. I'm like, "Oh, they're wearing our hoodie." And it's just like, it just keeps happening. And I think part of it is because it was truly authentic. There was no, "I'm giving you a hoodie, I'm expecting something in return." So there was none of this like sort of underhanded, like,
take a demo,
right?
Yeah. Like, none of that. First off, that never works. Like, here's $100, take a demo. Thanks for the $100. Never going to buy your product.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
So there was the authentic angle of, like you said, we were just giving value with no expectation in return. And we ended up actually getting more in return for it. The hoodies were super high quality. I used to run a clothing company. I'm a bit of a clothing snob. These were not just your traditional bullshit, startup hoodies with a logo slapped on it. Like, these were, ethically made and sourced and super comfy. Like, they're hoodies people actually want to wear. They're not bullshit. Our logo's a dinosaur, so this does not look like your traditional startup swag.
No,
right?
it looks
so I think
great.
there's an element of like people actually want to wear it, which also helps. And it just, it's people have offered us $200, $300, $400 for a hoodie. Like, they're like, "Can I just buy one?" I'm like, I don't have any more left. I'm sorry. So now we're making new ones.
Well, what's funny
too. Talk about what's in the sleeve though, real quick, because
Yeah.
I think that's a super ingenious idea.
Yeah, well, we had to one up the accidental hoodies. If we're making them intentional, we had to actually put some intentionality behind them. So there is an NFC tag under this patch. So when you get the hoodie, you can actually tap your phone to it and connect it to your product account, and then this becomes your personal referral code to our product. So if someone taps their phone to your sleeve, they get an invite to our product. So it's,
I love it.
Wow.
It's just trying to be fun, and like, it's not just a hoodie. It sort of ties into the product. So we're giving it to, like, we're sending it out to all our early customers as a thank you for being an early customer over the last few months. And then hopefully, it drives even more customers our way.
Yeah, I think
it's just the type of thinking. I don't know why people just insist on doing the same thing over and over again. Like,
here's a beer koozie, here's a t-shirt,
right.
Here's the same. And it's like, also, not to mention, a little bit of a sidebar, but like, fashion industry and is responsible for like 20% of the pollution in the world, more pollution than all maritime shipping and air travel combined.
I was watching that documentary the other day. What is that, Josh? I mentioned it to you because he's got older daughters. What is the fast fashion brand?
Yeah,
Shein?
No, it wasn't Shein. It's
a name. It's two names. It's Italian owned. Oh God, it's gonna drive me nuts.
Was
anyway, like, what was it?
Was it Cupshe? That's one that I've heard
damn,
of.
I'll think of it by the end of the show. But like the cycles that they go through and like the amount. So like apparently we ship all of our extra textile and clothing to Africa under this like guise of, oh, they need clothing and so on.
Recycling.
Yeah, but they don't. Like I forget like everyone in like this area, the area of the country where they ship it into, would have to buy one new piece of clothing every day for the rest of their life in order to actually, consume the volume that we send. So they buy these things in massive, like I think they're 350-pound like blocks that they're compressed into, and then they open them up and then they try to sell whatever is good in there. But like it's a massive like pollution driver.
And they use water, and it's like nobody wants your crappy $20 hoodie with your stupid abstract company shaped logo slapped across the chest. Nobody gives a shit, right? Like maybe your team does, but nobody cares. So I think it actually comes back to the people first kind of angle of it, where because we invested a bit more in the hoodies for ourselves, we're investing in the things that people care about, not the things that our brand cares about, right? So it's like, I think it also created like people are more willing to talk about the hoodies because they're like, well, I know this isn't some garbage corporate swag. It's like they put thought behind it. It's something I actually want to wear. We're not contributing to a problem. Like it's almost like I've had people tell me it's a hoodie that they can wear with pride, not just because they like our brand. They might not even be customers of ours, but they're like, it's a cool hoodie. It's good quality. I know it was made fairly. Like it's something they feel good owning and wearing. So it's appealing to the people side of it versus the salesy, brandy side.
So the irony of the whole thing is that you're taking the people-centric approach, but it's building up your brand equity, right?
Yeah.
So when you do have to make an ask of somebody to buy something, whatever that comes around, you're gonna have to sell something to be a business at some point, right? Like, it's
well, that's also like when we did that LinkedIn activation in January, the first people that we asked to activate and help us were people we'd given hoodies to in the previous few months. We're like, hey, we're doing a thing. They're like, yeah, of course I want to help you. I love what you guys are doing. We're like, all right, cool.
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is business isn't a straight line. You have to, there's going to be twists and turns and
it's influence.
And if you try, like people try to have this like perfect funnel and this perfect attribution model. And first off, it's a misguided quest. It's an impossible quest. And attempting to get there means you're going to end up doing only the activities that can be measured because you're trying to build a perfect pipeline. So you're going to do the ads, you're going to do the calls, you're going to do the emails, and you're not going to do the things that like actually move the needle. And very often they're kind of things like, and I understand like, you cannot do 100% of your marketing and your sales off of vibes, but I would argue that like 5 to 10% of it should be. It should just be like, is this going to make our target buyers feel good? Is this going to make them entertained? Are they going to have fun with this? Because honestly, that moves the needle more than like, here is your like, I mean, there's this stat, right, where it's like the number of outbound touch points that you need to turn a cold lead into an opportunity has 5x'd in the last 5 years, from 200 to 400 to 1400.
Just so much noise.
So it's like, so like, not only is this better, also not only is it more fun for our team, like our team has more fun with it, which then the market can feel that we're having fun with it. So there's like this infectious energy about it. It also creates more like meta marketing. Like I'm on this podcast because of the way we're going to market, right? So it's like, I get more opportunity now to amplify what we're doing because we're breaking the mold. And then people want to be a part of it because it's not just like, here's an ad, here's an ad, here's an ad, here's a cold call, here's a thing. It's like, it creates this, I think about like the biggest brands in the world all operate that way from a B2C perspective, right? Apple is so much, it's a cult, they joke, right? But like, it is a cult. Nike is a cult. It is not a brand. It's more than that. And most B2B brands don't really lean into that. And that's where I think like, that's the end result of doing people partnerships right, is you create a cult-like brand versus a boring, stuffy brand. Now, you can make money being a boring, stuffy brand. There's tons of examples of it, but that's not what the world needs more of, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the items that we've really been talking a lot about lately, like successful traits, whether it's a founder, whether it's a CMO or a founding marketer or what have you, like the ability to maintain a connection to that groundswell that's building, like that gut instinct is just something so important, especially in today's environment. So we're talking a lot about like things that are great and things that work, but we always love to ask any great partnership horror stories or engagements where you've just seen this go terribly wrong in terms of the people connection.
Yeah, I think we made some mistakes early on where we focused on partnering with people because they had big audiences. classic mistake. And in hindsight, you're like, duh, it's a terrible. It's like saying the obvious part out loud, but it's one of those things I feel like every company has to experience before they really feel it. Kind of goes back to like the influencers, and it's like, are they influencers or are they influencers? So we made some mistakes, partnering with just some wrong people that just didn't move the needle, wasted time, were a pain in the ass to deal with. We had some people that were like, yeah, of course I'll post you, and then post and like, all right, you owe me 10 grand now. I was like, well, hold up a second. Like,
wow.
What? Like, some weird, like, bait and switch things like that. We've also, I think one thing we actually probably, this is kind of an accident, because the purple hoodie thing took off before we were actually ready. The rest of our marketing was not up to speed yet. We hadn't launched our product, our website. Like, our website even today, I think, does a shit job of explaining what we do. We're fixing that. Like, by the time this episode comes out, hopefully that's fixed. But like, this is going to sound like I'm almost like complaining about things being too good. But in a way, like, the people partnership strategies and these activations and this marketing strategy we've done have actually worked so well that the rest of our marketing and our more traditional stuff has not caught. So I think we probably have a bit of a leaky bucket, right? Where it's like this top of funnel stuff, we're doing such a good job from a people first brand perspective. And we're definitely losing mid funnel opportunity because the rest of the foundational stuff, like, still has to be there, right? Like, you can't just have fun. You do need systems. You do need like a website that explains what you do. You need the interactive demos. You need a conversion mechanism. Like, a lot of what we talked about in the last 45 minutes has been top of funnel stuff, not middle and bottom. And we definitely didn't have the middle and bottom in place, partially because we just didn't expect our top of funnel to take off so quickly. And that's definitely been a nightmare.
Not that it solves everything, but like, when you are building real relationships and when you do have that authentic connection, like, you get a bit of grace from buyers as well, right? Like, hey, I know you kind of fucked that up, but like, you're a good person. Like, let's try and make it right. Like, when you're paying for a lead, like, you have to be perfect,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, I always say that to like sellers. Yeah, like you have to be the person that doesn't screw something up and count on the fact that everyone else is going to screw up, right? But when you're building that in a different way, again, like, it doesn't solve everything, but really it gives you a bit of leeway there.
Yeah, and you get people where it's like, hey, maybe you're not buying right now, but then in 3 months, like, hey, I'm in a position to buy, and I know you guys, and I like you guys, and once again, it goes back to that, only 5% of your buyers are in market at any given time. So your goal is to make sure that you're top of mind when that 95% becomes the 5%. And if they know, it's like, I kind of hate the thing people buy from people they like. Yes and no. They buy from people who are going to solve their problems.
Sure.
But if all other things are equal, which in today's day and age, products are more and more equal, like, product is less and less of a competitive advantage. If I have two products that both can solve my problem, both have the same price point, everything else is equal, I'm going to buy from the seller that I like at the end of the day. The one that I know, the one that I trust, the one I built a relationship with. Because, like, that's what matters if everything else is equal. And increasingly in today's world, everything else is becoming equal.
Yeah, agreed.
Totally.
So, Mac, as we kind of close out here, always like to give an opportunity, like, where should people go to connect with you? Obviously, you're pretty active on LinkedIn and so on, but if they want to learn, more about yourself, the organization, Commsor, like, where can they go?
Yeah, I say my LinkedIn is the best starting point. I think I'm the only Mac Reddin on LinkedIn, last I checked. So It should be pretty easy to find. I'm the guy with the dino emoji in his name.
There you go.
I was going to say, where can they go to get a purple hoodie?
We don't have any more, but like, if you want to buy our product, we do have some green hoodies for early supporters. And if you DM me on LinkedIn, you'll get a fun fact about dinosaurs. That's actually my tagline on LinkedIn. It just says DM me for a fun fact about dinosaurs. And it's like, I've had some like stuffy people be like, that's a stupid tagline. You're being unprofessional. I'm like, well, it works really well. So who gives a shit?
That is my bone to pick right there. Like, the unprofessional aspect and not.
Yeah. What does that even mean?
Like, yeah, like, it's
like the whole, like, you have tattoos, that's unprofessional.
Yeah. Fun is unprofessional these days. Like, it's always, the executive who's like, that goes against brand, then you see someone else at a show or at, an event, and they're just doing something totally off the wall, and everyone's over there. It's like, oh, look at what that unprofessional campaign is doing for them.
It's the people first thing, right? Brands, to a certain extent, with some exceptions, like Liquid Death can just do whatever the hell they want because that's their brand. Most brands do have a professional threshold that they can't cross. People, though, like, there's a threshold, but that threshold's way, way, way higher when it's people.
Right. Agreed. Well, Mac, it's been awesome having you on the show. Like, super insightful. I think, what we're talking about here today really is the epicenter of everything. It's relationships. It's what drives partnerships. It's what drives revenue. So very much appreciate you joining us. If you're tuning in for the first time, please give us a subscribe. Really helps us get the word out. And of course, we've got more great guests in store for the second half of this season. Thanks for joining us again here on The Cheat Code.
Growth requires more than capital.
Why do we call it the cheat code? Nobody said growth had to be fair.
Revenue solves everything.
Welcome to the cheat code.
What was our fastest path to revenue?
We tend to like to do things the hard way.
What's the cheat code? It's giving yourself an unfair advantage over the others.
What is it that really works, and how are we going to grow these organizations?
That's our cheat code.